Welcome to the Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today is an author who loves to create stories that are hilarious, romantic, with a touch of real life drama, filled with a cast of quirky and unforgettable characters. She has written over 14 books. I actually work with her in my other side of my life. Please welcome Carol Maloney Scott. What's going on, Carol?
Hey, thanks, Anthony. I really appreciate doing this. This is going to be so fun. I'm so excited.
I know. I can't wait. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I always like to ask the question, and I'm going to have a bonus one for you after this, but what's your go-to lunch or sandwich?
So, right now I'm trying to eat healthier, which is not fun, I will say. And I kind of had a tendency to eat like a teenager, and it needs to stop because clearly I'm not a teenager. But if I was eating what I really wanted to eat, I think my favorite lunch is a chicken parm sub.
Okay.
I'm a New York girl originally, and there's nothing I like better than a good chicken parm. Not as easy to get in Richmond, Virginia, although it's gotten a lot better. I've been here since 1999. And when I first moved here, the Italian food was, oh my God, so bad. It was so bad. But it's gotten really, we have some really good restaurants now, and there definitely are some really good Italian places now. So I can get it. But yeah, that's my favorite. And unfortunately, now that we have the ability to order food, I can like order it to be delivered to the house, which is really dangerous with, trying to eat better. But yeah, I'd say that's my favorite.
Okay. And I know you also love donuts. So, and I even see it in the background there. What's your favorite donut?
I like all of them, but I really like the ones that are filled with raspberry, like they're like the powdered sugar on the outside or the glazed on the outside with like the raspberry filling inside. Those I really like. And then you can't go wrong with the chocolate with the frosting and the like sprinkles. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. But I would say that there's a good chance, like, unless it's a super weird donut though, like now the donut shops around here make like donuts with like bacon on them and like all these like I know we're trying to get fancy and gourmet here, but like that's, I don't know. I'm more of a purist. Like, give me the normal donuts that we had back in the day. I don't need any like weird things on a donut, So yeah, but so back to the eating healthy thing though. I haven't had a donut now I don't think I've had a donut now in like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. And like, I want a donut so badly. You have no idea. Like, I just want one so bad. So I'm really trying to control myself.
That's actually really, I'm proud of you for that, because I know that you and I, like I mentioned, you and I do work together, and work has been stressful, and sometimes stress eating is not, sometimes some can be very difficult or sometimes lead to stress eating. So I totally get that. And I also, to me, I have like a love-hate relationship with donuts, because especially when you get like a good glazed donut and it's like hot and fresh, you eat it and then you're like, did I actually eat it? And then you have to like, well, maybe I need to eat another one because I ate it so like it just melted in my mouth. So then by the time you realize, you're like, well, maybe and then like you're like on your, let's say your third donut, and then you're like, that's way too many donuts. Like I should not. Is there a place because you're currently in Virginia, is there a place that you currently do enjoy a chicken parm sub or anything like that?
There's a place called Vinny's that is just over here in the West End in the Short Pump area that is just, in a suburban area. It's just a little storefront place that, just makes like pizza and like Italian specialty kind of stuff. And I really like their chicken parm sub. Yeah, they make a really good one. And it's just a little hole in the wall place. Like, and honestly, I find like those places usually have the best food. The fancier places trying to make like a basic staple like that, like when I lived in New York, we went to a little deli that like, was just like this little, like total hole in the wall. Like you wouldn't even want to eat in the place. It was so like not good, but the food but the sandwich was so good, so I tend to like the privately owned mom and pop kind of places.
That's a lot of times where I usually end up eating all the time. So I totally agree with that. And the ones that are unassuming are usually the ones that kind of, they just hit right. So I totally get that.
Yeah.
So where did the love of reading and wanting to write come from?
So when I was a very little girl, as soon as I learned that books were a thing, which, my mother did read to me when I was little, probably not as much as I ended up reading to my son when he was little, but my mother did read to me. But I wouldn't say she was a big reader, like, so I didn't really have any like huge readers in my family, but I did, have a few little books. But when I was a little girl, and I'm really dating myself, but I don't, but I'm sure this doesn't exist. But when I was a little girl in the early 70s, we got a mailing that was from, I don't even remember the name of the company, but it was like a book of the month club kind of thing. And I'm sure we were on this mailing list because as soon as you have a baby, somehow you got on this mailing list, and now the baby was like 4, so let's send them this thing. But I remember it came to the house and my mother showed it to me and she said, do you want this? And it was this like fancy brochure, it showed all the different books you could get and they were all really fun looking. I was in heaven. I said, I was like, yes, I want this. I was like, of course I want this. So she signed me up for this. And then shortly after that, she really started taking me to the library all the time and obviously learning how to read in school. And I really didn't learn how to read any earlier than anybody else because nobody was teaching me how to read. But once I learned how to read, then forget it. It was off the chain. And then once I learned that you could make up your own stories, and I was pretty fortunate that the school that I went to was very progressive for the time because we were really doing a lot of very creative stuff in the classroom in a lot of the classes I was in when I was a young child. And like when I was in 2nd grade, I had a teacher named Mr. Marks, who was a young guy. He was probably like 30 years old. He was a hippie. He had a long black ponytail and a beard and he wore sandals and jeans. And this was like in the 70s. So like people were dressing in a suit to go teach, and he was like the establishment guy, but he was the kindest, sweetest, most lovely man in the world. And he really got me into writing because I think he was the type of teacher that noticed like what the children were good at and really tried to foster it and really tried to do that. And I also had 2 other teachers in 5th grade and 6th grade. It's funny, all of my teachers that did this were men. It's very interesting. I don't know why, but like all the times I had women teachers, they were all like older ladies who were very like everything by the book. And yeah, I did some creative stuff, but the men, all these young men that I had all allowed me to do so many cool things. So like when I was in 5th grade, I had Mr. Moses. And when I was in 6th grade, I had Mr. Gordon. And they both let me do all sorts of things. Like I was writing a script for like a movie that we were doing in class in 6th grade. And I was like, just all this stuff. So I just really, once I realized I could make stuff up, like, and put it down on a paper and that somebody else might like read it and think it was funny or good or interesting or whatever. Yeah, I was hooked. Unfortunately, what happened, as happens to many of us, is once I hit about 13, 14, like once I got into like junior high and then into high school, I just really lost so much of my confidence because school became so much more about academics. And I was always a very good student. But elementary school was easy, so like, like once we went into like all the different classes and I hated science and math so much. It is worth it to me to be old, not to have to ever take science and math again. I'm serious. Like no one can come at me with trigonometry and that sine and cosine crap. Like they cannot come at me with that anymore. Like I'm too old and I'm not doing it. Right. So, and I think also just like the social aspects of school and, discovering the opposite sex in the, younger years. And just, I think I just really got myself very just caught up in like so worried about what I looked like. And, and so, when you write and you put your writing out in the world, it's very vulnerable. It's like your innermost thoughts, really. Even if it's fiction, it's still your innermost thoughts and you're putting it out there for other people to read and to judge. And when I was a young woman, I just did not have the confidence to do that. And then I got married young. I had my son pretty young. My first marriage was not good. So, that was just a lot of drama. We moved here to Virginia. Time just went on, and I didn't do any writing. And honestly, I didn't even do that much reading because I was a working mother of a young child in, a marriage that wasn't working, right? And living in a new place, when Nick was 4 years old. And I just had no time and I had no time and emotional energy to focus on that. So when I got divorced, Nick was 10 years old. I was 36. Then it was like, wow, I can do whatever I want now without anyone trying to stop me or control me or whatever. Like, and I have all this time now, like, cause he spent half his time with his dad and half his time with me. So I was like, what do I do with this time? I'm a mom, So I started playing with the idea of writing, but to be honest, and it's going to sound crazy, I didn't actually do it, like try to do it for another like 8 years.
Wow.
And that whole time from 36 to 44, which was when I met my current husband, and that's when I started writing seriously. But before that, I was collecting a lot of information. I was doing a lot of dating, and I was doing a lot of online dating. I was doing a lot of people setting me up with people. Oh my goodness. So I was collecting, not even realizing it, some comedy gold material that I could work with here, in this completely new version of my life, right?
Yeah.
So I started reading a lot of books about writing and like just the craft of writing. And it's funny because the first time that my current husband came to my house when we first started dating, we were sitting in one of the rooms of my house, and I had bookcases everywhere in the whole house because now I could do whatever I wanted. So there was bookcases everywhere full of books. I was the book lady. But he was sitting there looking at this bookcase, and he said, "You have a lot of books about writing books." And I said, "Yeah, I do." And he said, "So do you write books?" And I said, "No, I still haven't done it." So it was funny because he questioned that. And then I started thinking, like, why am I not doing this? So about a year after we started dating, I decided that I was going to write a book in secret. So I had an idea, like a basic framework. And I said, you know what, if I just do this in secret, I don't tell him, I don't tell Jim, my then boyfriend, I don't tell my son, I don't tell my family, I don't tell anybody. I'm just going to do it in secret when I'm alone, because I'm alone sometimes now. So I started doing it because I didn't know I didn't know how it was going to work out. Am I really going to be able to write a whole book? Like, am I going to want to do that? So I just started doing it when no one was around. So then finally I got pretty far into it, and I said, you know what? I think I'm going to really do this. So we were on a vacation at the beach, and I told Jim, I was like, I have a secret. I've started writing a book. And he said, wow. And I know he was probably thinking, she's not going to finish it. You know how many people say they're going to write a book, or they started a book, or they have a half-written manuscript, or a half a dozen half-written manuscripts sitting in a drawer somewhere. So yeah, but I did finish it. And then once I started, then it was like a snowball thing. And it was literally like, once I got past the confidence and the fear thing of putting myself out there, it opened the floodgates of my imagination. And then I just could not stop thinking of more things I wanted to write about. And honestly, I have an idea notebook, and it's actually sitting right in front of me right now. I have a lot of stuff online as well, but I'm when you're old, you like to write down things. So I like to write things down in a notebook. My idea notebook is so long. I swear, I hope I live long enough to write all these stories, because I just cannot stop thinking of ideas now. It becomes a little manic.
I want to just kind of backtrack on something. So you finally wrote the book that you were writing in secret. So once you did it, what was the next step? Because once you create it, like you said, a lot of people talk it, but they don't actually do anything with it, or they start it and then they kind of either talk themselves out, or something happens and they stop. What happened?
Sure.
Once you created it, how do you even publish it? What do you do? How do you get it out into the world to see? I kind of want to know a little bit about that part of the story.
Yeah, and that's a very important part, right? So, so that was one of the things that I had been thinking about all those years from the time I was divorced until I started doing this. If I write a book, how am I getting it out into the world? Do I really want to try to get a publisher? It's such a thing to do that. It's overwhelming, getting an agent and querying, and it can take you 5 years to get a book published, because you have to go through all this. I know one thing you probably do know about me, Anthony, from us working together, is that I am not very patient. And I also felt like I'm already in my 40s. I am too old for this nonsense. If I'm going to do this, it's getting out in the world now, right? So I started looking at, self-publishing was 2013 when I started writing the book. So self-publishing was the thing at that time, and it was fairly new, a few years new. So I started looking for other authors that were doing that, in this trailblazing world, right? And I found this one woman, and it's funny because I don't know what happened to her. She wrote under a pen name. I used to follow her on Facebook, and she just disappeared. I hope she's okay. I literally don't know what happened to this woman. And it looked like she didn't write anymore either, at least not under that pen name. But she wrote some books that were fairy tales turned into rom-coms. So it was modern stories, based on fairy tales. And that's a very popular thing now. I mean, so many people have done that in so many different ways. But I was always a girl who loved Disney and loved fairy tales when I was a little girl, because I love stories, and I also loved anything girly with princesses. So So I read one of her books, and I realized after I read her book that this was clearly self-published because I couldn't figure out who published it, so I was going down the rabbit hole, and I realized, so I started following her. So she was really an inspiration to me in terms of like what she was doing, to make this happen. And at the time, she and this other girl they started a little business to help authors to do this. And this was like really new. I mean, this was like, now there's so many people doing this type of business, but then it was like, no, this was a hard thing to find. So I enlisted her aid and the aid of this partnership to help me to like package everything, right? So they helped me figure out like how to do social media, how to do a basic website, how to do, just basic marketing stuff. And, being in the career field that I was in, I mean, I was pretty good with like understanding sales and marketing because my job was kind of sales and marketing adjacent, right? Yeah. So I was pretty good with that, but not in this space, right? Not in this space at all. So they really got me started, and it was really good to see an example of somebody doing it and doing it and getting a following. And, because she had a lot of people on Facebook and her Facebook group that, were reading her books and were, her fans. And I don't know how much money she was really making or anything like that. But in terms of just getting herself out there, she was doing it. She was doing it. And she was close to my age too, which was another reason why I was very, and she had like children the same age as my child. She was also a single mother. There was just a lot of things that were very similar that made me really relate to her as a person, and then, as a creator. So yeah. So I self-published the book on Amazon with their help. And then once I learned how to do that, it's really easy to do that. And it's only gotten easier over all these years. That was 12 years ago. July 31st, 2014 was when I published my first book. And, that was a big deal, and it was really fun. And then I decided to continue with that series. So that's the On the Edge series. And then I wrote 3 more books in that series. And then I decided to write a prequel, which became the 5th book in the series, but comes before the first book. So there's 5 books in that series. And there's just stories in the same world. So other characters, being the main character in this main character's world, the original main character's world. So like her work friend or her friend across the street, or her, whatever, other people in the same world. So that was fun. And then after that, I decided, I was like, okay, I've written enough in this world. Like I want to, because all the other worlds were like knocking my door. All the other world ideas were like, can you please write one of our ideas now? One of our ideas. So I had a lot of other ideas, but I really wasn't sure what I wanted to write next. I was really trying to figure it out. And this rom-com thing, yeah, definitely my lane. Everything I write is funny. Everything I write is meant to be light and entertaining, but also very relatable, right? Like a lot of crazy family drama and, just life drama, work drama, all the things, right? That women and men, but obviously my main characters are women, but that people, just experience in their daily lives, and so people can see themselves in the characters and see themselves or someone they know for sure in those situations. So I decided that I wanted to write something maybe that had magical elements. So at this time, my stepdaughter was 15 and we were on a beach vacation. We're always on a beach vacation. We were on a beach vacation and we were sitting in her bedroom on this beach vacation. And we were sitting on her bed, like just like hanging out, talking, like waiting to go do something. And she was really excited about me writing. Like she was really into it and very supportive and just very nice about it, and she and my husband, we were not married yet. I think we might have been engaged by this time. Yeah, I think we were engaged, but we weren't married. I was not married to her father yet. But so we're sitting there and she said, Carol, you should write something with some people that have superpowers. And I'm thinking, like superpowers are cool. I mean, I was a super Wonder Woman and Batgirl fan growing up. Like when I was a little girl, like I wanted to be them big time. So like I got it. But I'm thinking superpowers. So we ended up that day laying on Jamie's bed talking, figuring out the whole plot for Love Pixies, which was the next book that I wrote. And it's about 3 young women who graduate from college and go on a graduation trip to Ireland. And while they're in Ireland, as you do, they met a Irish fairy, a very big, tall, flamboyant Irish fairy who gets them to sign a contract to become fairies. and gives them all of these powers. And now they have to go back to Chicago. And by this time, my son was living in Chicago. So that's why like I had this like Chicago angle on this, because I'd been there a number of times and I was like, let's set it somewhere different. So they went back to Chicago and had to start like their jobs and their lives. And, you know, they have obviously friends, family, boyfriends, whatnot. And the humor in that story is they have to obviously hide their powers now from all of these people in their lives, that it's a secret that they love pixies and that they can do magic. So that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. Yeah. So just trying to always think of something different.
So, and I wanted to, because you mentioned the idea that you have like notebooks with all your ideas on there. And obviously you get inspired by things that are going. So, and you'll probably send your things on your phone. You probably, an idea may come up or some side story or anything like that. How do you kind of organize all those ideas and thoughts? Because I'm the same way. Like I have a lot of notebooks where I write down ideas and things like that. But my problem is sometimes I'm all over the place on it and it's not all organized. So it can be a little bit difficult sometimes. How do you usually kind of handle that? Or sometimes when you just need inspiration, you just start flipping through the book. I'm like, oh, I need like some kind of drama or something. Let me flip through the book and see if I get inspired by something.
When I decide to actually write a particular story after I have everything, you know, and so organized, I am not the most organized person because my brain is all over the place. So I actually got introduced to an app, and my son, and again, you're going to hear, I'm always saying the kids taught me something because they did.
That's good.
They do. My son's a graphic designer. He lives in Chicago, and he does all of my my book covers and like my assets for my graphical assets, you know, for my stuff. And he was using this tool called Trello, and it's just an organizational app. And he was using it like for stuff at school, like when he was actually, you know, in college at the time in Chicago. And he showed it to me, and I was like, "Oh, I can get around this because this doesn't look too complicated." So I'm always afraid to use something because it's going to be complicated. I'm like, "No, don't give me some weird, complicated thing that I'm not going to understand, and then I'm going to get mad and want to throw the phone." So no, so Trello though is a really good app because you basically create different boards for different projects. So like I have a board every month. I have a board that's like my monthly to-do list. So every month so right now we're in the June to-do list, right? And you can move things around to either done, or you can move them to a different month, or you can move wherever, you know, you just move the little tiles around, which is very simple to do. So I do that. But when I'm starting a new story, like an actual book, especially fiction, I get a brand new notebook like I would have when I was a little girl, because I used to walk around with a notebook staring into space when I was a little girl, always scribbling. My family always just say, "Oh, she's always got her head in that notebook scribbling," you know. So I do actually write out in the notebook, like I make a list of all the characters, and like I make my character like Bible, you know, these are all the people that I think are going to be in the story. This is, you know, just their basic information, you know, age, eye color, hair color, height, like whatever, you know, what do they do for a living? Who are they married to, or whatever, all those things. And then I usually just start sketching out like the plot, you know, like I know what's going to happen at a high level. And then I kind of break it down to a lower level, you know, to the more granular level. A lot of people ask also of authors, are you a pantser or a plotter? You know, and a pantser is somebody that writes by the seat of their pants, meaning they don't do any of this planning. They just sit down and say, I have a sort of an idea that I'm going to write something about fairies in Ireland, and they just start writing it. No, I do not do that. If I did that, I would still be writing my first book. Like I have to have some structure around what I'm doing. So I would say that I'm a plotter, but the plot always changes as I go along. So I'm not like really religious about that plot. You know, it's a loose plot. It's a loose plot. And I would say almost every fiction novel that I've written, I've changed the story halfway through because I realized it would be so much funnier now if they did this, or it would be so much cooler if this happened, or even new character. What if a character that does this came into their world, or whatever, you know? So I do a little bit of that, figuring it out as I go, but I have to have a structure to start.
That makes sense. That totally makes sense. So I know you've done, and like I mentioned before, you've written 14 books. I know you've talked about all the different types of series: Meet the Family, On the Edge, Spooky Matchmakers, and then you obviously did some additional individual like solo books.
Right.
can we talk a little bit about those different like series and
Yeah.
like, and I'm also kind of curious on like when if your family's ever read any of these, because I'm assuming you get there is inspiration by the people around you and things of activities. So I'm assuming there's certain elements of these characters that are kind of, maybe some characters may actually be a reference point of a character that you actually deal with on a day-to-day or real life, things like that. Is that something that have they noticed that or seen that or been like, hey, Carol, why, like that sounds very similar to me, or or a version of me?
Yes. So the short answer is yes. So the first book that I wrote was very much semi-autobiographical, and the family that I created for Claire, the main character, was very much based on people in my family, and everyone read that book because it was my first book. So it was like, I don't think my father read it because he was not going to read a rom-com, but my mother read it, my sister read it, many of our mutual friends read it, everyone read it. And it was funny because everywhere we'd go, like Jim and I would go, somebody would try to get me on the side, like at a party or a whatever, and say, hey, did that really happen? Like a funny situation, or did something like that really happen? Does Jim know about that? Or does he know that really happened? Or, or they'd say like, does your mother know? Or so there'd be all this like, and then especially like extended family too, like my aunts and uncles then, and my cousins. And then people were coming out of the woodwork saying like, wait, is that guy supposed to be based on your uncle so and so, and most of the time they were spot on and it was true. I think as time has gone on, I have done less of that semi-autobiographical stuff, but there definitely still are characters in all of my books that in some way are based on someone I've known. And I have a very eclectic family, a lot of characters, a lot of crazy characters. So, and I've known a lot. I've known a lot of very interesting people, and I just have a lot of comedy gold and also just like quirky gold, kind of stuff in my head from like people that I've known and people that I've met. I do try though to be careful that if I do really reference anything in a book about a character doing something that really happened in real life, that it's not anything that was bad. Maybe it was silly, funny, or we're poking a little fun at it, but I don't, like, for instance, I don't have any characters in any of my books that are based on any of my ex-boyfriends, yeah. Because when those relationships end, it's like, even if it wasn't a horrific situation, and sometimes it is, right? Sometimes it was horrific. Even if it wasn't horrific, it's like, I'm the first, I close the door on that stuff. Like, and I don't find that funny. Like, I don't find it funny to think about like things that happened to me with relationships that ended up not being good. Right. So to me, that's not funny. Like, but my uncle having done something funny, or my old neighbor, or my old coworker, or my mother, or some, anybody else, like, then it is funny because I still like those people. I still know those people. I still have a relationship.
No, that
with
makes
those
sense.
people.
That makes total sense. I think one of the things I enjoyed seeing from my research and like the reviews is that you write for women who kind of need a break from like perfection, from pressure, people altogether. I also laughed because one of the things that you wrote, and I saw that even people have like acknowledged in the reviews, is like it's one of those things that you can read, like, and I think I read was like, you can read it while you then start laughing in the middle of the night while your husband's asleep in bed.
Yes.
And I think that is so great and so needed to have like that relatability of being able to have something like that, and they're not living in it. So it's something that I found, I chuckled when I read that, because I was like, oh, I'm like, my wife has read many books where she's like laughing while I'm in bed, like I'm sleeping, and I hear her chuckling to herself.
Yeah. And that is very gratifying, I have to say. Like, that is one of the things that, because I just love to know that like there are strangers out there, because in the beginning it's your family and friends are reading your book, and then as you get more reach in the world, there are people, there was one of the first like big fans I had was this young lady who lived in England who found my books. And then there was another woman who I still talk to today who lives in Canada, who she calls herself my number one fan, Krista. So that's really cool. But one thing that has really been very nice for me is just, I've had many emails from people, because I have a mailing list. So, and I very much welcome readers to like write to me, and I always answer. And it's so funny when you answer an email, from a reader, they act like you're like this wild celebrity. Like they're like, I can't believe you responded to me. It's like, okay, I'm just a person, just like you. It's not that big a deal. But no, they get very excited. But I've had a number of women write to me over the years and tell me that my books got them through something bad in their lives, like their husband had cancer, or they lost their mother, or they lost a pet, or, you know, something just, you know, they were unemployed, they were whatever, you know, something bad was happening in their lives that they were trying to manage. They were a caregiver for a parent, you know, who was ill, or something dark in their lives that was heavy, you know. And a lot of women have written to me over the years and told me that my books have really given them like a really enjoyable escape from whatever the heaviness was in their life.
Yeah.
And that really makes me feel good. Like that was like the type of thing. I'm not a big crier, but that's the type of thing that makes me cry, you know, because it's like, it's really nice to know that like some stranger out there is feeling better because of something you wrote. That's, to me, that's very, very powerful. Very powerful. And yeah, the laughing in bed. One woman I have a review on one of my books that says the woman was like, she said, don't read this anywhere in public. And I guess she was reading it in like a doctor's office waiting room. And she just like, or a hospital or something. And she just started like cackling. And, you know, she was like, don't be careful if you're reading this in public, you know. And so all of that, yes, is very gratifying. And then there's always going to be reviews where people say, this is the dumbest nonsense I've ever read in my life. You're an idiot. Because that is the internet and that is the world.
That is 100% accurate when it comes to that. Like you always were going to get a mixed bag of things. It's and it's fine. Like the ones that know, appreciate it and know those, that's great. Do you ever get the same readers that write to you? Do they ever write back to you and as well and like say, hey, Carol, I got this idea. What about doing this in a series or some kind of thing like that? Like, because I know I get things like that from people and I welcome it. Sometimes I'll take it and be like, oh, let me write it down. That sounds like something I can kind of work with. Or other times you're just like, oh, okay, great. And then you just smile and nod and just kind of go from there.
So I have gotten some emails like that. And I've actually even asked for some of that kind of feedback in my newsletter, because I really do want to have that dialogue with readers. I enjoy it. And I want people to see me as a real person. So there's been times when I've done like a contest or something where I'll say like, these are the ideas that I have for my next book. Which one do you think I should write and why? And if you write to me and tell me, you're entered in the contest to win something, you know, that type of thing. So I have gotten some of that, but I will tell you, so for the past about 6 or 7 months, though, I have been putting myself out there big time in the real world, which I never did before. And I know, you know, I've talked about this, doing festivals and doing conferences and book fairs. Yeah. So all these years, I have never done that. I've never tried to sell my books physically, locally. I've never tried to get them in bookstores. No, everything was online. And I finally decided that I needed to stop being a baby about this, because clearly I'm not shy. Clearly, I am not shy. This is ridiculous. How am I not able? Like, I can talk to anybody about anything, anywhere. I can't go and sit behind a table and say, here's my books, really, you know. So, but I was so scared to do it. The first one I did, I was a basket case. I was like, I can't do this. I'm not going. Like, I can't do it. I have to cancel. But so I've been doing a lot of them. And I love it. There is nothing more fun than talking to readers in person, talking to people about books in person, just meeting people who are just excited about things in person. Like, and book people are unbelievable. Book people are hardcore. Book people are the most fun people. They're the kindest people. They're so supportive. You know, I find so supportive of indie authors and self-publishing, you know, which has really become, for many authors now, more of a choice than their only choice, you know, their only path to publishing. You do own your work. You own your own work. You make more money from your work. You know, you own the rights to your work. You can charge whatever you want for your work. You can do whatever you want with it. For someone like me, who's very controlling, I like that aspect a lot too. But the really fun thing about meeting readers is that, people tell you their stories because they have a captive audience. You're sitting in front of them. It's not even an email, right? They don't have to write an email. We're having a conversation, right? When we're talking about, I love this in a book, or I love that in a book. I have had so many women give me their contact information or take my card and say, oh, I want you to like come to our wine group because we have so many stories. Or, you know, once they know that like I write about relatable things that have happened to women, and particularly like, you know, women who are not kids, you know, so women in their 30s, 40s, 50s. So many of these women just have so many of their own stories and they don't want to write a book, but they want it in a book. So many times people tell me something or something just happens. A few weeks ago, I was in one of the breweries at a little book fair. at one of the breweries in Richmond. There's a million breweries in Richmond. Like there's so many, it's ridiculous. I don't understand how there's enough people to drink beer at all these places, but apparently there is. But I was at one of these breweries. It's called Strange Ways down in Richmond. It's in a neighborhood called Scott's Addition. And it was this little book fair. And it was like, it wasn't very busy, you know, and usually they are pretty busy, and it wasn't busy. And I was thinking, oh, this is a waste of time sitting here all day, you know, but then like later in the afternoon, it started to get busier. And I was like, okay, maybe it's going to pick up now. But all of a sudden, these people walk in. Yeah, they were young people. They were probably in their 20s. All these young people walk in, and they're wearing all these different animal costumes. And around their neck, they're wearing these like chicken necklaces. And I'm just looking at them like, what the hell are they doing? So one of the girls, and you could tell they already had been to several bars, and like they were all very tipsy. This was a walking tour of bars. So this one girl comes up to my table, and her eyes were like this. She's like, I love books. Tell me about your books. So I was like, okay. So I started telling her, and she's like, oh, okay, I want to get some books. And then I said, but I need you to tell me, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? So they do this. This is a group of people that do something. They call it like a chicken run. And one of them dresses up as a chicken. This person was not in this particular bar, but one of them dresses up as a chicken, and the others all dress up as other animals. And they have like 12 to 15 like bars or breweries in the city within a certain radius that they're all going to go to. So they all go in different directions, and they have to find the chicken, find what bar the chicken is currently in. I was dying. I was like, this is the funniest thing. So I told them, I said, this is going in a book, the chicken thing.
I was going to say.
My wheels are already turning, thinking like, how funny could this be? Like, who's in the chicken costume? Like, maybe they wouldn't know like who's in the chicken costume or whatever. So like, yeah, I'm laughing about this. So then the girl, she's like, this lady's going to put this in a book. So now they're all coming over, and they're all like excited because I'm going to put their chicken thing in a book, you know? So they're all, so I got all this attention because of this. But yeah, it's funny. People tell you that people do the darndest things. You know, they do. People tell you crazy stories, crazy funny things that they do, crazy habits that they have. And all of that stuff for the type of books that I write is material. It's all material. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's funny.
So one is the idea of, because since you mentioned you just started doing like 6 months ago, what have you learned doing that, like doing the events and trying to do those things? Like, how have you found them? I figure if anyone who's listening to this who is a writer and wants to kind of get their information out, like, you know, even if they're not in Virginia or anything like that, but it's got to be very similar-ish. What have you done? What are some things that you've done to kind of help you either get involved and find those locations that allow you to be able to sit and actually share what you're creating and what you're doing?
So I'm in a lot of author groups on Facebook. I always have been. I follow a lot of other authors. So I've gotten myself to know some authors, right? And they live all over the country and even all over the world. And honestly, I started to notice that a lot of them were doing a lot of these live events all over the place. And my first thing, again, because of my imposter syndrome, was, oh, I'm not going to be able to do that. No one's going to want me to do that. And so it took me a while to say, okay, well, you know what? How are these people better than me? Maybe I could do it. I'm big. I could do it. You know, I'm a big girl. I could do it. So I asked this one woman that I follow, like, about it. And she told me these two other Facebook groups to follow they're called like author events around the world or author events in the US or whatever. So there's a whole bunch of these groups that are just dedicated to people advertising when they have these types of events and asking for people to apply. And they have like little Google forms where you apply to do it. And they ask you just, you know, basic questions about what you write, and, you know, and then obviously they vet you and look you up and see, do you look like a normal person, you know. And invite you to join their thing. So it was funny because once I started doing this, all these people everybody was saying yes to me. And I remember saying to my son, I was like, I thought they were just going to say like, we don't want you. Like, you're stupid. Go away. You know, and he gets so upset with me because my son is 31 now. So, you know, now we have a grown man. My stepdaughter's 27. She's a lawyer. You know, so we've got real grown-ups in the house now in the family. And yeah, they are both like, what is wrong with you? Why don't you and stop it? Your books are good. People like them, you know? So I've gotten more confident, obviously, as I've been doing it, but I also find Instagram is a huge, huge resource for finding people in the bookish community, wherever you live. I would recommend to any author that's looking to do is follow other authors in your genre, and not just the big ones, not just the top best-selling authors, that the household names that everyone knows, because there are a lot of authors that are not household names that are still making a good amount of money and a good amount of reach, with their books and are doing well. And they're on Instagram, and so I would say follow those people, follow all the local bookstores in your area or your state, or the indie bookstore thing is huge right now. There are so many people opening indie bookstores. And then the other thing that's huge, and this is what I want to do now when I retire, my poor husband, I keep telling him a new thing I want to do when I retire all the time, but there's a lot of these pop-up and mobile bookstores now, where either you have like some kind of a trailer or a truck or a vehicle and you bring that to the location and sell your books out of that, or you just have tables and bookcases and things and you drive them to the place and you set it up, in a book fair or a craft fair or wherever, a farmer's market. Those are huge right now. We probably have 7 or 8 of them in the Richmond area. And Richmond is a medium-sized city. And you would think, how are all these women, and they're all young women doing it, but it's like, how are all these young ladies making any money? They are, though. Like, a couple of them have quit their jobs. So I think there is a huge resurgence right now in people wanting to shop local, people wanting to shop small, people wanting to have human connection. It's almost like a backlash of the internet. Like, the internet is still cool, but it's not cool because it's like people want to meet people in real life again. And all of these events that I go to are, almost always very, very well attended. People are really excited to be there. I mean, I've had people say to me now, like, oh, I came to see you. And there's like 70 other authors there. And I'm thinking, like, you came to see me? Like, I'm looking behind me, like, is there somebody behind me? Like, you came to see me? Wow. Because these people are really into this. I mean, they really are into meeting local authors, makers, people that are doing cool, interesting things and supporting them as opposed to, supporting the billionaire companies.
No, I agree 100% with that. And I do see that. I've seen a lot of different book concepts and more books, independent bookstores. And I'm glad you brought up the idea, because I was going to ask that, like, following not just local authors, but following the local bookstores. When you do as a self-publisher, how does that work when you self-publish? Like, because obviously then you have to buy, almost similar to how I have to do, like, I buy merchandise, obviously, for me to be able to sell. Even though people can buy your books on Amazon and different areas, you obviously have to then buy your own inventory for you to be able to bring to the events. So that's something that you're able to pull off. Do you get, and I'm not into this world, so I'm not sure, like, do you get like a author discount, or are you buying it like a wholesale discount type thing in order to do it and things like that to get it created? How difficult is it to get it, like, to get things like that published? Because I know it's a lot easier, obviously, to put that information and put it online and then have like, and you can correct me, like, I know Amazon does it, has some format of that, of like self-publishing there. They'll print the book and they'll do all those things. I don't know if you do something like that or what, but is that something how you kind of do it for when you do events? You're able to then produce a product?
Yes. So I never used to have physical book inventory in my house because I wasn't selling physical books. Now the spare bedroom, which we always call Nick's room, even though Nick hasn't lived here in 11 years, is full of books because I have to have inventory now, and I have to keep track of the inventory and which titles are selling more at events and which titles I'm running out of. And, so I'm getting to this whole idea now of having to have inventory, order inventory. That's new for me. Amazon allows authors to buy what they call author copies. So yes, they do. They charge basically what the printing cost is to get the book. So I would go into my author account on Amazon and order, the author copies of my books. It does take like a few weeks for them to get to me because Amazon is not doing like quick shipping on those. Like it's not like the guy is living under your house and brings you the thing you just ordered like in 5 minutes, like with all the other Amazon delivery. So you have to plan. You have to plan a little bit, or you're going to run out of stock potentially of something that is selling. So I do Amazon for sure, but there are some indie bookstores and indie booksellers in general that don't want to work with Amazon in any way, shape, or form. Which you have to understand that because obviously Amazon, as mighty as they are, put a lot of smaller businesses.
Well, that's how it started, right? That's how it started. That was the whole premise of it.
Right. And they put a lot of people out of business. So and I think a lot of the people that have been running indie bookstores for like 20, 30, 40 years, like small bookstores, they really felt it because they were there when the change happened. Whereas some of the newer indie bookstores with some of like the younger people starting them, they're not as angry with Amazon as some of the older, so they're not as opposed to having Amazon books. But there's a company called Ingram that does publishing as well. And so Ingram Spark is a branch of that company that will do print on demand printing of anybody's books. Like, so if you put your books on Ingram, then, which I have now, then that will allow you to either get your book in bookstores or with booksellers that do not want to deal with anything that has been produced by Amazon. And it's also a way that a bookstore, a bookseller could directly buy your book at wholesale from them, which you cannot do on Amazon, right? So it's basically a wholesale site. So a lot of bookstores, pretty much any indie bookstore, any bookstore that's not Barnes and Noble or, the big guys, they're buying their books from Ingram for the most part. So they can go in and actually order your book at wholesale. But the great thing with the paperbacks, though, is that even if your paperbacks are on Amazon, like, you're not exclusive with Amazon for paperbacks. There's no option to even do that. Like, so you can sell your paperbacks anywhere you want. Like, I could create my own online store, which I think I'm going to do eventually, where I could just sell directly to customers from, online from the store. And then if an indie bookseller or a bookmobile person reaches out to me on Instagram and says, oh, I'd like to get a few copies of your books from my store, I can just drive over and hand them to them if it's local, and they can Venmo me the price that we agreed on to, so it's like, there's a lot of options of how you can get your books in the hands of the people either that are going to read them or sell them to other readers.
I love the fact that there is a version like an Ingram, like you said,
yeah,
that does stuff like that. I use something similar to that, except, and like in the sense of like, I use something called Fair, which does
I love
like
Fair.
A lot of, yeah.
I just discovered Fair. So all these bookmobile girls, I call them the bookmobile girls, but I've talked to these girls a lot now because a lot of them have bought my books and sold them in their shops, so I've talked to them about their business. I definitely want to do some kind of a book pop-up thing when I retire because it is so fun. I mean, they're just going to all these events and selling books, and I'm thinking I could sell my own books, but I could also sell other books, and I've read so many books. So, I mean, I feel like I would be so good at like recommending books, so it's like the whole book thing is like taken over my whole brain. But one of those girls told me about Fair. I've bought some bookish candles and stickers from small makers on Fair, and I'm selling them too.
I love the fact that there's a book version of that to be able to do it, and also an option that you can use to then get you into the door of those independent bookshops, because that's one of the things I was curious of as well. So I'm glad you brought that up when it comes to that. How do you balance it? Because I know our job, we both, obviously, like I mentioned, we both do the same line of work. We're coworkers. Our job can be very stressful and demanding, and time consuming. How do you balance that along with the aspect of finding time to write? Obviously, the book, like doing activities such as, doing the pop-ups or going into the readers fairs and things like that. Those are weekend activities, which it works out perfect, or after work. But I was just kind of curious, like, how do you balance that aspect of, or figuring out an outlet to kind of like, after being such a stressful day, how do you balance that to then be creative and to be able to actually put time into creating and writing a book?
It can be hard. And, depending on how stressful work is, and right now it is difficult because it is more stressful than normal. Normally, I don't let myself get that stressed at work. And I actually am trying to do a lot better with just like leaving it at the end of the day and realizing that I'm only one person. I can only do so much,
Mm-hmm.
and really just letting it go at the end of the day. But honestly, I feel like when your side thing is something that is really fun for you, it doesn't really feel like more work. It really doesn't. Like I get more energy from doing my side thing than I do my day job. Like, yes, the day job kind of sucks the life out of me sometimes, but then just knowing that I'm going to do on the weekend, I'm going to have a fun book event, or I'm going to, I'm going to spend all Saturday working on my book or whatever. That really just gives me to have that creative outlet really helps me tremendously. And it does help me to put the work thing in a little bit more perspective as well. One time I remember somebody telling me you should think about your day job as if it's your side hustle, and think about your side hustle as if it's your main thing, even though time wise you can't actually make that happen, right? You do have to do your job if you want people to pay you. at your day job, but to just like mentally look at it that way, like meaning like this job is supporting my book habit, or my, making t-shirts habit, or my, making candles habit, or whatever the thing is that we really want to be doing. Our day job is like helping us to do that. And so looking at it that way, as opposed to like a miserable thing we have to do that we don't want to do, that's taking us away from the thing we want to do. So I think some of it is perspective. Also, I think there are some people that want to write and do things that it's just really is harder for them. Like, I'm in my late 50s. I have grown children who are gone from the house for a long time. I haven't had to worry about like a little child. When I first started writing my first book, I think Nick was 17 or 18, so I didn't have to worry about that so much anymore, and I had more of my own like time being my time. If you have 3 children under 5, and you have a day job, there are people who do it, but I don't see how you do it. It's hard. You have to really think about like, what is your current reality and what can you do within that reality? And you should not compare yourself to other people, because there are writers who can write, 4 to 6 books a year because they have the kind of freedom that I have. And then there are others that they're only going to be able to write 1 book a year. Maybe not even their first one's going to take them more than a year. And that's okay. It's not a race. It's not a competition. Seasons of life change. Children grow older, jobs change, life changes, and, you have to change with it. So I think getting started is the main thing. It's like getting started and just having a consistent practice, whatever that looks like for you, whether you write every day, whether you write every weekend, whether you write every other day, whatever it is, like just getting started in a consistent practice and sticking with that and not beating yourself up if you're not doing as much as somebody else. That's the problem with the internet, is we can compare ourselves so much to these somebody else's, and I fall prey to it. Believe me. Sometimes I see like, some of these like girls like 30 years younger than me. Like, I'm like, how do you do this every day after work? And they're like, oh, I'm fine. And I'm thinking, when I was 28 years old, I could do 50 things at the same time. Even when I was in my 40s, I was still doing like a million things at the same time. But I feel I'm maybe slowing down like a tiny bit, like just not a lot, but a tiny bit, and that's okay. I met a man last week who was 89 years old at a book event, and he was selling his books that he was still writing. 89 years old. He drove himself there 3 hours from where he lived, set up his booth, his table.
That's awesome.
Sold his book and was asking me about marketing tips. And he's 89 years old. He's still interested in, marketing his books. So when I see somebody like that, that gives me a lot of encouragement also to keep going, because again, seasons of life, he has a lot of time, but he's almost 90 years old. That man does not have the same energy level he did when he was 30. He doesn't. He doesn't. It's impossible. But he's doing what he can do, right? And he's out there and he's doing it. And I think that's so cool. And I want to be him when I grow up. I want to be that person that can do it forever. And I learned from getting burned out in my career coaching business that, you can only do so much, and you have to do your pace. The way you're going to not be able to do it anymore is if you try to do somebody else's pace. You have to do your pace, whatever that looks like.
I like that.
And that's sustainable.
No, I agree with that 100%. I ask my guests to manifest things into the universe. So I want you to manifest for yourself and for your writing what you want for into the universe.
What I really want to manifest into the universe is to be able to retire early from my day job and do this full time. I would like to write full time. I would like to do the book selling thing. And I really feel like that's not only my own passion and my skill, but I feel like it's where I connect with people on the most, human, emotional level. I'm a very extroverted person, and I really like people, and I like to meet new people, and I just like to have that variety in my life, where I'm out there in the world, not just sitting behind a computer typing, and yeah, that's what I really want to manifest, is early retirement. I'm not sure exactly what year that looks like, but early retirement, so that I can focus on doing this full time.
I love that. And I agree with that. And that's why I ask you to put it out there. The other one is, what advice do you have for someone wanting to start something? I know you've talked about for writers, if they were to start something, and I think it may fall on the same line, but I'm curious, what advice do you have for someone wanting to start something?
I think the first thing that you should do is really just do some kind of research around whatever it is you want to start. But I say that with a caveat. you can research from now until the ends of time because of the amount of information that is available to us currently, right? We're not going to the library looking in the card catalog like we did when we were children. We are now, now we have to use the internet, and there's a lot of information. So I think we want to do research, but I think we also want to follow people who are doing the thing that we want to do and seem to be doing it successfully and enjoyably. Because you can find so many people that do the same thing, but some of them are negative. Some of them are doing it in a way that isn't the way that would work for you, right? They're not your kind of person, right? So I think that, like, for me, I was always attracted to the authors to follow that were a little bit more outgoing. A lot of authors are very, very introverted. And I meet some of these people at these events and they say, oh, I don't want to do any video. I don't want to put myself out there. And I always say, really? Like, that's the easiest part of this, is just, but for me, it is. For them, it isn't. So I think you want to think about, what do you want to do and who is doing it? Like, who is doing it and who is doing it in a way that seems like you could do that too. Instead of that comparison-itis thing where it's like, I want to do it like this person has, 1 million followers and this person has been doing it. No, find the people that are successful, but are still building, So you can relate to them and their success isn't so recent that, they can't offer you anything, but it's not so far ahead that it's going to make you feel like you're not getting there fast enough. Right. So I think that's a good thing to do. And I also think I was a little bit of like, with both my career coaching business and my author business, a little bit of like a lamb to the slaughter with the internet, because there are so many people out there, countless people out there that are trying to sell you things, buy my app, buy my product, buy my service, buy my course, buy my, and some of that stuff does have value. I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't. Some of it does, but a lot of it doesn't. And a lot of it is not really what you need. I think getting a mentor or like somebody to follow, or a few somebodies to follow, or even people in your local area. I've had people come up to the booth and say to me, I want to write a book. I decided I'm going to write some kind of a getting started with writing book, because I had this long conversation with this girl who was like, I don't know how to start. Because when you don't know a lot yet about whatever it is you want to start, you really can fall prey to a lot of these people that really just want to sell you something that you don't need, or maybe you don't even need it yet, right? Like, you may need it down the road to help you build your business, but the get started piece, you really don't need to be spending a lot of money or, investing in a lot of things that you're not sure if they're going to bear fruit. Because if they don't, then you feel like, oh, now I'm doing this thing and I'm not getting any return on investment, and I've spent all this money, and then this pressure, and, there's a lot that we can do just from interacting with other people and learning from other people and just talking to them about what they're doing and watching what they're doing and just learning, and I find that particularly anybody that wants to start anything that is like in our space, Anthony, like anything that's like a small maker, a small creator, a small, influencer, whatever. I think those people tend to be very, very nice and welcoming to helping others to do the same. I really find that.
For the most part,
right.
I do think there are some people obviously that are going to, like, I kind of look at, because I've seen that, and like, there's two aspects, right? There's some people that hold things close to the vest, don't want to share,
right?
Because they're like, I don't want to give you my secret sauce, because they look at it as competition, even though you and I may look at it as, hey, there's room for everyone to do everything.
Right.
And then there's also the other aspect that I've noticed is, like, I'm usually pretty good at like giving, but I also want to make sure that you're actually like researching and trying, so that it's not like, I'm not just going to give you to give. Like, I want to know that you've actually put in some work, and I'm just not going to give you the answers or the keys to the kingdom. I want to be able to make sure to see, are you actually doing something, or have you put in any work, or are you just coming and expecting me to hand you everything? Because I have 13 years doing this, and I'm not going to just hand it to you.
Right. It also doesn't even work if you try to just hand it to people, because, I've had people say, like, how do I if I want to write a book, Carol, how do I self-publish it? Okay. There's like 100 steps to go back before you even get to that answer. So don't even think about asking me that yet. We have you got to go way back to figure out how you want to do that, So I think, you're right. And I think there are people who want information and they ask for too much information. They want the easy button, and none of this is easy. None of this is easy. If you really want an easy get rich quick scheme, I don't know, go buy a donut franchise or something. I don't know. This is not creating something of your own from scratch, no matter what it is a lot of work. It's a lot of emotion involved, and it is not a get rich quick scheme, and it is not easy. There's nothing about this that has ever been like easy. But if you really like it, if you really enjoy it, if it's really your passion, if it's something you feel that you really feel called to bring out into the world, then it's definitely worth doing. But I think you need to give yourself some grace, some patience. It's hard because you get excited about a thing and you want to do it. You want to do it all. Like, you want to do it all immediately because it's so exciting. But you need to give yourself a little grace and patience. And also you do need to, if you are reaching out to other people for advice or partnership or a friendship, yeah, you need to realize that those people are not necessarily going to tell you, everything about the keys to the kingdom for free, and that you have to approach them more like, you as a friend, as opposed to, just somebody who's just trying to I just want to know you because I want you to tell me how to do this for free,
Yeah.
So I think we need to be respectful of the people. Yeah.
I agree 100% with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it is a tough one, especially and I look at it as, especially you, as like what you do as a creator, and and when you create something and it's time consuming and putting so much time into it, and you, like you said, it is a very emotional thing, because it's like an idea that you have, that you're putting yourself out there, and whether it's something that you've created, written, drawn, built, or assembled, or even made with your own hands, it can be very difficult. But you just kind of have to, if it's something that you love doing, and I will probably say your first book compared to where you are now, you're probably a better writer, because the more you're doing it, and the more you learn the tricks of the trade, or just certain aspects of it, where you figure out what it is that you like, but also what your readers like, or your customers like, and you kind of start figuring those things out, and you start figuring out a formula or the recipe to what works for you. And that's always important. I did one question, which I don't know if I missed. Do you have an editor, or who edits? Do you edit everything, or how does that whole process work of editing?
So I've had editors that I've paid in the past and worked with them. I've also done, now that I have a very large audience in terms of like my mailing list, now I can have like people read my books and help me with editing. I usually do pay somebody to do proofreading, but in terms of like editing, like, do you like the way the story is going? Do you like the way the characters are? Usually with that type of which would be called more like developmental editing, that I usually do more with my readers, and send them early copies of the book. And actually I'm writing a book right now that I've almost finished. And like in the next couple of months, I'm going to be sending that out and saying who wants a copy, to give me their opinion or advice. And sometimes people catch things that I didn't catch, but most of the time I'm really just looking for does this story work? Is this hitting? Is it hitting, the way you want it to hit? And you're right. The more you do this, like in the beginning, I really couldn't have done it without like a developmental editor, because I really didn't know what the hell I was doing. Like I was like, in terms of like structure and craft, and I was trying to learn all that as I was going. Even though I've read a million books, it's still hard when you're first writing a book. But with every book I write, I feel like I get better and better at writing like cleaner copies, not having to do as much editing, hitting the points, hitting the character arcs, hitting the story arcs, hitting the plot lines. There's a lot of debate about using professional editors and in the indie world, because, obviously if you traditionally publish, you have an editor, and that editor makes your book look very different than it did when you started with it. Some of that is good, but I think some of it is bad, because I think sometimes I think a lot of traditionally published books now, especially in certain genres, all sound exactly the same. And I feel like sometimes the voice of the author is really taken away. And when I read some indie authors' books, I feel like, wow, I feel like this is more unique. Like this person's voice is shining through better. So I think that it is good to work with somebody who's an editor, a proofreader, somebody to help you with craft, somebody to help you with all of that. It's a good thing to do. But, honestly, at the end of the day, it's also very expensive. And, to get somebody to do that high level of work for you on your book. So you really have to think about, like, what is your budget, and maybe you can't afford to pay a developmental editor, like a few $1,000s to help you edit your book. Maybe you do need to, go to writing groups or take writing classes, or, utilize, people that, to read, readers. Because the bottom line is, I feel at the end of the day, yes, we wanted the book to be, free of errors and, good proofreading and all that. But what we really want is for people to like the story.
Yeah.
We want people to like the story. So if people are liking the story and they're buying it and they're reading it and they're liking it, it's done. It's edited.
Yeah.
It's done. And yes, you do need to write popular fiction if you want to sell it, obviously. But I also feel like there's very little innovation when people aren't trying to do something different. And that's why, like, I did like trying to do some books with some magical elements or some out of this world elements, and just see. And the funniest thing is, so the Spooky Matchmaker series is about grandma ghosts that come back to help their granddaughters, like, with their love lives and problems in their lives, like their adult granddaughters. And when I first started writing that, I thought, people are going to think this is the silliest, stupid thing. Like, is anybody going to like this? That first book in that series, which is called Nobody Tells Leah Anything, that is one of my most popular sellers at events. As soon as I say to people, Grandma Ghost, they're in. They think that's hilarious. They're like, Grandma Ghost, I love that. I'm buying it. And when I put it out online, it didn't do as well as it does in real life. But I just start telling them Grandma Ghost, and they're like, I want, that's hilarious. I want that.
So I'm going to bring up, just because of how my brain works and when it comes to me doing these podcast episodes, you mentioned you have no issues being on camera. Have you done any videos like that where you kind of do your elevator pitch as a video and then put it on social?
So I'm going to be really honest and vulnerable in my answer to this. And I knew you were going to ask me this, and I was not sure what I was going to say, but I've decided that I am just an open book, and I'm going to say it because I think it would help a lot of other women, especially other women my age. So when I was doing the career coaching business, I was in my early 50s, and I was doing a ton of video, like a ton. I mean, I was going live everywhere. I was doing teaching things. My face was everywhere. I was everywhere. So I stopped doing that for years, right? But have not stopped writing, but I've stopped putting myself out there in video. And over the past 6 months, I've been really, really beating myself up saying I need to get back out there and doing video, because when I meet people in person, I mean, they seem like they really like me. Like, I seem like I connect really well with people, in person. And so I keep saying, you need to do more you need to do video. Why are you not doing video? And the God's honest truth of why I haven't been doing video is because I just think I look really old now, and I don't want people to see me looking old. And I think that is a problem.
No, and I listen, if you don't feel comfortable, like, it's one of those things, like, even though you may feel comfortable in person, sometimes I know people don't like listening to themselves listening to their own voices. Some people don't like seeing themselves as via video, because we are our worst critics, right? But even if you went the route, and I'll even go the route of, even if you went the route of coming up with a way of doing it where you're just doing voiceover and you're still doing a video of the book, where maybe it's a picture of the book. Maybe you ask Nick to say, hey, Nick, can you create some form of illustration, or maybe show, I don't know, like a visual version of it where I can make a clip of it where I could then talk over it and then be able to give the book. So it's like almost kind of like some kind of thing where, like, the book, or heck, even post like the book somewhere and have it like a cool background, and then like video and like zoom in on it or zoom out on it, and then talk about the book as you're going, just to get it. Because I feel like if people understand the story, especially when it comes to a book, like, obviously you can't judge a book by its cover. But in some cases, you want to be able to share some of that. And I think when you can give an elevator pitch of some sort of what it is, the backstory behind it, of why it is, and all those things that people can watch and see, and that you can share on Facebook and all these other places, it kind of may give another way of not just watch people reading of what it is, but they're now hearing about it and seeing it and being like, ooh, I kind of like this idea. This is kind of cool. I like the idea of the matchmaking grandma. Or the ghost grandma. So just something to think about that I kind of like when you started talking about it, I was like, oh, because I was even going to say like, that's something also, it kind of goes in the same part of the video part of it. And granted, it's very easy for me to tell you these things because there's many things I should be doing, taking time to do and creating content to do. But I will say, like, even you talking about wanting to give tips and creating something in this day and age, even if you created some form of like little tip that you can create on your social as like a weekly tip for the author to be like, hey, weekly tip, things to learn. You can do this. Why aren't you doing this? Have you thought of doing this? I think those are great resources for people to kind of see, and also for you to build, for people to kind of learn more about you and also see that you're giving and you're not just, because as us as like content creators and brand owners, we want people to buy our product, but at the same time, we're also you and I are kind of very similar in the sense of like, I don't want to be the sleazy salesperson. Like, I want people
Right.
to want to buy my thing. And if you don't want to buy it and you don't like what my brand is about, then so be it. But I want you to know where I stand and what I'm about and what I'm trying to do. And if I can help you in some way as well, or be able to give you something and content wise, I think that's super important. So just something definitely to think about. Like, think of a creative way of how you can do it until you feel comfortable. And I think that would be a huge thing to kind of help get more people to get, hook on learning what the book's about.
Yeah. So you're right. And there are a lot of other things. And I did do some of that too in the past, without me being on camera. But one thing I have decided though is that I need to stop being so vain and ridiculous. Like I mean, like it's ridiculous. Like and I really feel like, when I was doing my career coaching business, that was also geared towards women and women gaining confidence and not having imposter syndrome and doing the things they want to do in the world. And I think that I've really gotten to the point now, and it's funny that we're doing this via video, because today I was thinking, I'm like, oh, I have to be on the video. And then I said to myself, you know what? You did so much video. And it's not like I did the video when I was 30. I did the video like a few years ago. Do I really look that much older? I mean, probably not. I mean, a little bit, maybe. I don't know. Who cares? Because the bottom line is I'm not modeling clothing. I'm not, this isn't a beauty contest. Like it is, like, yeah, it is what it is. I'm not, pretending that I'm younger. Like, who cares? Like how old the writer is. Like, who freaking cares, And I think I met this other woman who was like, I think she's like 75. This woman, Diane, she's like a true crime writer. I met her a few months ago at one of my events. And again, I want to be her when I grow up because she's so cool. But she was telling me how she's on all these TV shows and podcasts and all these shows talking about true crime. She's like she's interviewed like serial killers. Like she's like semi-famous lady. She has long gray hair and she's wearing glasses and she's just like, she puts on her lipstick, but like she's not thinking, oh, I want to pretend to be young on the internet. Like she's just putting herself out there,
She's like, I'm me. I'm a writer. This is
how
what I'm
I
doing.
look now because I'm not 20 years old anymore. So I think, yeah, I really need to get past that because I enjoy doing video. I actually do enjoy people seeing my face, like in a way, So I doing this today has been really helpful for me because it's the first time that I've done something like this where I'm speaking to someone and that's going to be, publicized in the world on camera. And I, once I put it on and I turned it on, and of course I did my makeup and everything, but once I put it on and I said, look that bad. Like, I was like, I don't look that bad.
No, you look great. You look great.
Okay.
And if anything, this is going to force you because all my clips are going to most likely be video of you and I talking and you talking. So,
right.
Which is great.
Yeah. And it really, and because I am such an extroverted person and because I do know that is a strength of mine, it is very foolish for me to hide behind any vanity or fear around any of that, because obviously, sure, will some people, look at my video and say, oh, she looks this way or that way. Sure. But even if you're 20 years old and you're putting yourself out there, there's people criticizing how you look. That's just the way the world is right now. So who cares? I have a message and that I think could help other people and entertain other people. So why would I not want to put it out there and connect with people as much in real life as I can? And to me, this is close to real life. Yeah. I'm moving around. You're seeing me, so.
I totally agree. Where can people follow you and where can they read your books?
So they can follow me on Instagram at Carol Maloney Scott author. I also have a Facebook page of the same name. I tried TikTok for a little while and that drove me bonkers. So I decided I cannot do TikTok at this point in my life. It's just too much. I'm like, I cannot deal. Although it's a good thing for authors, but I'm not doing that. And then of course they can also they can find my books on Amazon. I have if you just type in Carol Maloney Scott, I'm the only person with that name. It's really easy to find all my books. And then if you're a bookseller or a wholesaler, somebody that wants to buy wholesale, I do have my books available on Ingram Spark as well. For someone that doesn't want to support Amazon and wants to buy. And I actually do have some of my translated books into other languages on a platform called Kobo, which is a Canadian-owned company. I'm also working with three, because of course I make my life as complicated as possible, three different audiobook narrators, because I want to finish getting the rest of my books into audiobook. I actually have a number of them that currently are in audiobook, and I did those a few years back.
On there when you go in and check this out. Carol, I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of chat with me. It's something that we've been wanting to do for a while, since we both know we have our secret lives are very creative. And so I really appreciate you taking the time, taking some time today to to hang out and chat and be able to share this. I thought it'd be something really good for my listeners, just because I try to find anyone who's trying to create anything and everyone's got even if you're like, and what I find interesting is, even if you're doing something that may not be like, I may not be interested in writing a book, there's always something to be learned from someone in whatever it is, when they're trying to be creative or just trying to get their work out and get the word out. So I thought it was great. So I really appreciate you being on. That's our show today. Thank you so much to Carol Maloney Scott for being on and having lunch with me for a long lunch break. Obviously, we both like to talk. Make sure to definitely check them out online. Check out her books. If you're in Virginia area and you see, or heck, if you maybe if you read her books, go to your independent bookstore and say, hey, do you have any Carol Maloney Scott books? And if they say no, be like, hey, you should get some. I think that's a great way of doing it. Word of mouth. It's amazing what it can do. If you enjoy the podcast, make sure to subscribe to the show. If you want to support my brand, check out Deli Fresh Threads. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thanks, everyone.